Hey there, YouTubers. Thanks for stopping by today. Getting ready to record a Spiritual Almanac podcast for Monday, February 15th. Hope you had a great Valentine's Day yesterday. Got lots of stuff for you today in the podcast. We have a nice, really interesting piece from Catherine of Sienna starting us off. I really like it. It's kind of one of those pieces that talks about, her initial experience with God, and I think, you might be able to relate to that. And then we have some pretty cool nuggets too. It's Nirvana Day in the Buddhist tradition, so we're going to talk about that. What is that all about? We're going to talk about the death of Socrates, and then we've got some other cool stuff, including a nice little word of wisdom from Willie Nelson. So I hope you stick around for that. Real quick, before we jump into the podcast, if you're watching this and you like what you hear on YouTube, I really appreciate it if you click the subscribe button or the like button, or maybe you left a comment. It would be really, helpful to me to know that there are folks out there who are really interested in what we're putting out here every single day. So if you have a chance to do that, I'd appreciate it, all right? Anyway, let me get set up and let's start the podcast. Welcome to a Spiritual Almanac. It's Monday, February 15th, 2021. When Catherine of Sienna was a teenager, her mother told her she needed to look pretty to attract a husband. In protest, Catherine cut off all her hair. A little while later, Catherine joined the Dominicans and entered a 3-year period of prayer and solitude where she experienced visions of Jesus, Mary, and the saints. But Catherine is most famous for her inspirational letters, which eventually turned political. Her writings rail against the elite and talk about how people who play games of power only increase the amount of suffering in the world. These days, she's fondly remembered as one of the Christian tradition's most respected theologians, as well as a powerful political force in her time. For today's inspiration, we're looking at a piece that describes Catherine's initial encounter with God and shows how a spiritual experience can radically change your perspective. It's a piece titled, Consumed in Grace. I first saw God when I was a child, 6 years of age. The cheeks of the sun were pale before him, and the earth acted as a shy girl like me. Divine light entered my heart from his love that did never fully wane, though indeed, dear, I can understand how a person's faith can at times flicker. For what is the mind to do with something that becomes the mind's ruin? A God that consumes us in his grace. I've seen what you want. It's there. A beloved of infinite tenderness. Some more nuggets for today. Today's Nirvana Day in the Buddhist tradition. Nirvana Day marks the death of the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, in 483 BC and his achievement of final nirvana. In Buddhism, nirvana is the release from the cycle of death and rebirth. To achieve it, we have to abandon our desires and our attachment to suffering. And that's actually a lot easier said than done. Buddhists celebrate Nirvana Day with meditation and the reading of passages from sacred texts. It's also an opportunity to reflect on one's own death and the impermanence of life. And speaking of the end of life, on this day in 399 BC, the philosopher Socrates was sentenced to death by the city of Athens. He was officially brought to trial for corrupting the city's youth, but in truth he was condemned for his teachings and philosophies. During the trial, he reportedly spoke the now famous words, "The unexamined life is not worth living." After the trial ended, they delayed the execution a month so they could celebrate a religious festival. Although Socrates' friends tried to convince him to flee Athens, he refused to leave because he regularly taught about the virtues of civil obedience. On the day of his execution, Socrates drank a cup of brewed hemlock and walked calmly among his friends, then eventually lay down and waited for the poison to reach his heart. And finally, our words of wisdom for today come to us from the country music legend and cannabis connoisseur, Willie Nelson. Willie said, "There's only one map to the journey of life, and it lives within your heart." Here's hoping your heart points you in the right direction on the road of life today. And that's today's Spiritual Almanac. For additional reading, see the Dialogue of St. Catherine of Sienna, a conversation with God on living your spiritual life to the fullest. There's a link in the description and on our website. A Spiritual Almanac is a production of Granola Soul. Check out the text version of today's episode, Catherine of Sienna's Consumed in Grace, and other resources at our website, granolasoul.com. Thanks for listening. If you have a second, do me a favor and hit share or like. I'd really appreciate it. Until next time, be kind, take good care, and I'll see you soon.